We are going to send a message to the billionaire class. You can't have it all.
Heyo! No, it didn't work. Welcome to Evolution of Now. I'm your host, Jordan. Yeah, just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. But yeah, I'm your host for today. We will have a very saucy topic coming up. But before we get into that, I would like to introduce my co-host. So let's start with Chris. How you doing, Chris?
Oh, wow. I actually get to start first for once? Oh, man.
It's opposite day.
I feel actually loved for once. Oh, it's so nice. But,
you feel the embrace.
Get Chris out of the way first before you get to the good people.
Well, fuck you then, Michael.
No, I think Michael's right here.
What a bunch of jerks. Why do I put up with this every week? You know, I mean, God. It's terrible.
Welcome to Let's Laugh at Chris for an hour.
Hold on. That's what you guys get. That's for you. But anyway. Mm-hmm. I'm the one with the soundboard.
So Chris, you were once... Okay, so I said how you're feeling, and you were once feeling warm and embraced, and now you feel just like sad and depressed.
Yeah, it's kind of a microcosm of the world right now. You know, you're like, there's hope, but then all of it gets drained away because everything's shit still. You know, I mean, there's moments of hope here and there, and then it all just gets drained away by reality. But you know, that's all I'm saying.
Isn't that the truth? Well, following up, Aubrey, how are you?
I'm all right. Well, we'll get to exactly how I'm feeling when we get to my story. I have strong feelings.
Ooh, a little cliffhanger there.
Yes.
All right, and to wrap things up, Michael, how you feeling, man?
I'm just really fed up with politics still.
Yeah.
How's Brexit going? That's all you really have to say to Michael these days. Man. That's really all it is.
It's one of them where, like, I decided not to do a story this week because I could do a story every week and just say, oh yeah, by the way, this other thing's wrong. And and all the newspapers in England are basically, there's so many thousands of things that are going wrong. They just pick one and write a story about it. Mm-hmm. Oh, what are you going to write today? Well, there's this other thing that's wrong with Brexit. Okay, do that. And then tomorrow we'll do a different thing. And tomorrow we'll do a different thing. So every single paper is trying to do different things on the same subject. So just wall to wall, Brexit is a massive fuck up.
If only someone could have actually said something beforehand to say, wait, guys, this is going to be a train wreck if this happens. Please don't do this. If only.
Yeah.
If only.
It is a massive dumpster fire.
Nobody could have seen this coming, though, guys. I mean, who could have seen it? Nobody. But anyway.
Yeah, moving on, because, you know, we can get stuck just lamenting about Brexit. We have a couple stories tonight. So let's start with you, Chris. What do you got?
Well, I wanted to start with a lighter story for once. Apparently, Jon Stewart has rescued goats from the Brooklyn subway tracks recently. That's a heartwarming story, right? I mean, apparently there were a few goats that roamed onto the tracks of a subway, or of the subway tracks in Brooklyn Monday, and it went viral, apparently, these goats just being on the tracks, because what else doesn't these days? Everything apparently does. And I guess Jon Stewart and his wife, I guess, helped in the efforts to get these goats off the tracks. And the NYCT subway Twitter handle, I guess that's the city thing for the subway. I don't know. But they tweeted out 2 very bad boys, and they put a picture of the 2 goats on the tracks. And yeah. But apparently they saved them, and they got them off the tracks, and they're all safe and sound and on a sanctuary now, a farm sanctuary for the goats, and they're all safe and sound.
I just got to say, I love New Yorkers. Well, New Yorkers are the only people that can watch a person-sized rat drag a piece of pizza across the street and not think a second thing of it. Or you can see...
They'll just pull their phones out, you know?
Exactly. And the same thing with this story. I like how they were just on their daily commute and they're like, oh, yeah, he has to get someplace just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
They did.
Whatever, don't hate. Subway goats, I mean, come on.
To be fair, London's very similar, except London is less passive and more passive-aggressive.
Like they'll be pushing it, goes, get out of my way.
Yeah. You see a person-sized rat dragging a pizza down the street, and it's not so much. You don't go around it. You just go, fucking move.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So that was a lighter story for the world at least. But apparently there's also the Trump organization finance boss, I guess, is what this article is saying. Alan Weisselberg has reportedly been granted legal immunity in the probe into Michael Cohen. So they haven't released why or what he's really given up on these investigations, but he's been granted immunity. And he's reportedly mentioned on a tape secretly recorded by Cohen in 2016 in which a hush money payment to an alleged lover of Mr. Trump is discussed. So we can only wonder what this is in relations to what he's getting immunity to, but yeah, who knows?
Which, mind you, just to clarify, paying someone not to talk about you having an affair with them is not illegal. However, it's how they chose to actually pay her to keep her quiet that's illegal.
Yeah,
so we're all clear.
They used campaign funds,
yes.
Didn't they? Right?
They used campaign funds to basically pay her off.
Right, and the problem is that like in like the Cohen case, like he's making in-kind contributions to his to Trump's campaign, which exceeds the amount that is allowable, which is only the allowable amount is only around like I believe 2,700, somewhere floating around there, and he's paying these women upwards of $150,000. That's just illegal. You just can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What makes me wonder is America. There are so many loopholes in your electoral laws. How on God's sweet earth do you get convicted for electoral violations? Of all things.
You have to be really stupid about it.
I asked that one guy. What was that guy's name that made that stupid Hillary film a while back?
Dinesh
D'Souza. Ask that guy. Yeah. He knows all about it at this point.
Something to do with the concrete business or something. I don't know. I don't know the details for that.
From what I remember of what he got convicted of, it was like he gave money to his mistress and his wife and his organization to put money into a campaign for someone. And because of all of that, they
basically he tried to get around the personal limit that you're allowed to donate directly to a campaign. Which I mean, and like I said, if Trump had decided to go about paying her off in literally any other way, as long as he didn't use campaign funds, he would have been fine.
But apparently, I would guess that Mr. Trump wanted to get a tax write-off on it. That's why he funneled it through the campaign funds, right? So, I don't know. That'd be my guess.
Because what you donate to your to campaigns, political campaigns, isn't tax refundable. There's no tax write-off there. I'd have to actually look up exactly why they would choose to do that. I think primarily just because it wasn't his money.
All right. Yeah, that might be it too.
My initial guess.
My guess is he'll be trying to cover it up. So by doing it through the campaign means it's not directly tied to him.
Yeah.
Of course, it was tied to him, but he's too stupid to realise that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have noticed this. Donald Trump isn't the brightest person.
What gave you that idea?
Nor is the circle.
What is it? The color coded flashcards that they gave him last week to explain to him what finance or what was it?
Trade.
Foreign trade is, yeah.
Let me guess. Let me guess what those colors were. Black is bad. Brown is still bad, but not as bad. White is good, and orange is best.
Could be. I don't know. We'll never know. I hope those go, they'll go public at some point and someone leaks them on the internet or something. That'd be great.
I know.
It'd be so awesome. It was like, trade, good. Trade war, bad. But, yeah. So those were my 2 stories for the week.
All right, go. So moving on. Yep. Aubrey, what you got?
So, I think probably by now a lot of people have heard about the Molly Tibbetts case. She disappeared while she was out jogging about a month ago. She's from Brooklyn, Iowa, which is a very, very small town in rural Iowa, which has about 1,500 people living in it. That's how small.
Very small town in Iowa. Every town.
Shush.
Sorry. I had to.
But so it turns out the guy who allegedly killed her, he has actually admitted to it, but I'm not sure what the legal rules are there because he hasn't actually been convicted. He's originally from Mexico. The authorities said that he was an undocumented immigrant, but then they also misspelled his first name when they said that. So, and then, which, Trump immediately went out and was like, oh, these illegal immigrants, they're doing all this, bad stuff. They're such horrible people. And Rivera's, that's the guy's name. His lawyer came out a few days after that and basically said, no, he's here legally. And his employer said, yeah, no, we ran him through E-Verify. He's here legally. And his employer is a dairy farm that's owned by a prominent Republican. I should say the family of a prominent Republican in Iowa. But it turns out that the farm actually didn't use E-Verify, and they actually lied about that.
Those jerks.
Yeah.
Well, obviously.
So, as of right now, we're actually not sure whether or not he actually is undocumented. His lawyer claims to have evidence that he's here legally.
Is it a rabbit in a hat? Well,
I don't know. I'm sure it'll probably come out in court. ICE, of course, claims he's illegal and want to deport him immediately because that's what they always
want
to
do. ICE, yeah.
Yeah.
ICE doesn't give a fuck if you're here legally.
I know, they don't care if he's here
anyway.
legally or not, yeah. But yeah, so there's all that. And then, immediately afterwards, it comes out on just literally everywhere, everyone going, oh, all these illegal immigrants, build the wall now, save the next Molly. And it's just like, oh my God, you fucking assholes. Chris, can you play the clip,
I'm in a rage! This is the maddest I've ever been!
I totally messed that up, but yeah.
You did. You totally messed that up. But no, it's just, I feel Harry Potter just totally encapsulated exactly how I feel about this story. Which that was a clip from the Harry Potter musical. Actually, that's from the sequel, a Harry Potter sequel, which is on YouTube if anyone wants to look it up. But yes, it's so frustrating because everyone is focusing on the person who committed the crime. He admitted to essentially stalking her. He apparently was following her when she confronted him. He, and threatened to call the police. That was when he panicked and, according to him, blacked out. And then he woke up later with her dead body in his trunk.
Yeah, because that happens.
That happens. But everyone's just ignoring the fact that essentially this was a case of violence against women. It is quite literally textbook. He stalks her. She says no. She says, go away, leave me alone. he attacks.
And then denies ever doing anything. Oh, I blacked out. I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, and then he's refusing to take any responsibility for his actions there. I mean, he did actually eventually lead the cops to her body, where he dumped it in a cornfield.
I'm sorry, it's out of place, but it would be a cornfield.
Well, yeah. Iowa.
Oh God,
It's Iowa.
Of course.
I think the thing that gets me is that it's so obviously politicized. I mean, and
Obviously, yes.
say, well, you don't politicize the deaths and stuff, but it's ignoring all the
They're
facts of the case.
immediately politicizing it.
One thing that's not even true.
Yeah.
And then when you talk to them, well, it's
Might
okay.
not be
You want
true,
to
at
say,
least.
Molly, let's have a look, see what we can do about domestic violence or this kind of cultural problem of essentially men feeling entitled to responses from women. No, you can't do that. That's whatever buzzwords they want to use for it.
Yeah, and
But they're not even trying to hide the blatant bigotry that is the root of this. They do not give a fuck about Molly at all, or anything like that. They just want to use it as a bludgeon to hit Bennett people with.
Yeah, and I mean, I just wanted to read a quote from a friend of mine whose name's Miranda. She lives here in Ames. She posted on Facebook, Molly Tibbetts was murdered because a perverted, entitled bastard couldn't take no for an answer, not because said bastard was an undocumented immigrant. If you're going to latch on to a societal issue, make it the fact that a certain subset of men feel that murder is a reasonable response to having their advances rejected.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably a better view. Yeah.
Yeah, and also additionally, there's over 4,000 missing children from Iowa alone. Maybe a fraction of them got the same sort of search that Molly got. There was an all-out manhunt. They were searching, they were combing through ditches, they were looking everywhere, high and low for her, which is great. I love that kind of response to a missing person report. But that isn't usually what happens when there's a missing person report. But Molly was young. She was a very attractive female. She was, like a sophomore in college,
A hot young white girl. Yeah.
Yep, a hot young white girl. So instantly she grabs headlines and people go out searching for her everywhere. And it's like, yes, that is exactly this kind of response that everybody should have when someone is missing. But that isn't usually what happens unless they are hot young white women.
Pretty much.
And so it just frustrates the hell out of me because, I mean, we were getting contacted by friends who live in different states going like, I heard there's a young woman missing near where you live. And it's like, what? You heard about that? Why is that in your news?
Right.
Might also be that they want things to distract from right now, too.
Yeah, that too.
Totally.
And I mean, Steve King's all over this.
Like I said, they're using it as a nice little bludgeon to beat their divisive politics into people with.
Yeah. I mean,
I believe
Trump spending. Oh,
Go for it, Jordan.
No, sorry.
Go for it.
God.
No, I was just gonna say I believe Trump even tweeted about this.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He's the one who initially broke the news on the national level that Riviera is supposedly undocumented.
Yeah. He said it in a rally, didn't he? Like, he mentioned it at least
I think so,
in a rally. So, of course.
Yeah, all the news reports up till then had simply said that he was subject to immigration detention, which literally could mean anything because even if you're a legal resident with a green card, you're still subject to immigration detention if you commit a crime.
Yeah. Another thing that these Republicans, the problem with the Republicans on this kind of stuff is they latch onto this and they say, oh, you see this illegal immigrants doing all these crimes. But if you look at statistically, illegal immigrants or immigrants in general even, have statistically lower crime rates than just homegrown citizens of this country.
And furthermore, places with high concentrations of undocumented immigrants tend to have lower crime rates in general. violent crime rates, that is.
Yeah.
Immigration in general is associated with less crime rates.
I would also assume, though, that might also be because they don't want to be dealing with the cops in those areas, so they don't,
yeah, of course not.
call the cops, so the crime never gets,
They don't want to get caught and deported, so obviously they're not.
Yeah.
They're going to be very careful about not committing crimes.
Well,
and trying not to
or
break the law.
not actually, going to the
It's not
cops
just not
about
reporting,
one.
though. I
you
mean,
know?
they're less likely to commit a crime.
Yeah, that's true too. But yeah,
and that's so important to note because it shows that it's not a systemic issue, which means that this systemic issue comes from this guy's entitlement, to being a man, but it's not tied to him being an immigrant.
Yeah, and the thing is, that kind of thing happens all the time with every population across the world. It's a much bigger issue that no one really cares about.
Yeah. Thousands of women in the United States are raped and murdered every year. Every year. But one woman is murdered. We don't even, as of right now, they haven't said whether or not she was raped. It doesn't sound like she actually was. She was murdered by an undocumented immigrant, and obviously undocumented immigrants are the problem.
Over here in the UK, for decades, probably literally decades, the feminist movement was telling people about how it's shameful that we don't take victims of sexual assault seriously. There are victims of sexual assault as children or as adults and they go to the police and the police just write them off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't even know, whatever reason. Then, the Times, there's a journalist in the Times who did a report about systemic sexual abuse in Rotherham. Turned out to be a mostly Muslim gang that were abusing girls and had been for decades. Far right jumped all over it. And I mean, literally for decades. And they've been dismissing the feminists as they're just reacting to nothing and the usual feminist twist. As soon as they find out it's mostly Muslims, now they care. Now they care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you'll hear this in the UK far right a lot about the Muslim grooming gangs, and, which is a really big, complicated topic in its own right. Probably deserves. I've thought about doing it as a topic for this show. Problem is, it's very difficult to talk about because you spend all your time just. Talking about it with the far right has put me off because it's very clear talking to them. They do not actually care about the victims. They're not interested in a realistic appraisal of problems and potential solutions and what needs to be done and a genuine reflection of the problems in our society that lead to this kind of thing. They just want to bash Muslims.
Yeah, and that makes it harder to address the actual problems.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with our culture. It's nothing to do with the way we treat women. It's nothing to do with how we tend to doubt victims of sexual assault when they come forward. It's nothing to do with how we tend to pin rape victims. They would say, okay, well, what were you wearing at the time? It's nothing to do with that. It's nothing to do with what we did. It's their culture. It's they did. And we can just attack them for that because that's we do.
It's a lot easier to point at people outside of your own, group and say, see, those guys are all bad and stuff. It's a lot harder to point inwards and say, okay, something that we're doing is wrong,
Well, at the end of the day, it's all. It's all done out of a need to cultivate more power. That's all it's about. I mean, that's the only reason why Republicans are using it as a tool. It's the only reason why Trump is. It's the only reason why people who support
I think
the right does.
I think there's two levels to it. I think, and they're not distinct either. But there's two types of it. There's the ones who are doing it to essentially it's a wedge issue for them to build gullible twats out of money and political votes. So your Robinsons and your
wait a minute, Robinsons.
And it's also used in basically in a way that links to our topic. It's a way to try to cultivate extremist views and basically cultivate a certain mindset towards a certain group of people.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. But yeah, so one part of it is getting money. If you shout about Muslims on the internet for a bit and then people give you money, I don't know exactly how that works. And the other part of it is people are just angry, and they want something to be angry at. And for the life of me, I can't figure out what they're angry at. And sometimes you can talk about maybe they're angry about economic conditions and all this, but at some point it's like they're not actually angry at anything. They just want something to be angry at, and then Muslims show up and it's, okay, now I'm angry at Muslims and I hate all Muslims. And all I can say is it's just pre-existing bigotry.
To piggyback on that before you jump in, because I just want to say too, is that the way the economy is performing now is essentially it's on a steady. It's pretty steady from when Obama had it, except the way that Republicans are kind of reacting to the economy currently is a lot more favorable than when Obama had it. So despite it being on the same track in terms of unemployment when Obama had it, they still view it a lot more favorably today than when he did, which they cite as being a part of the reason for why they voted Trump in office in the first place. So this whole economic being a huge factor into their into them voting for him it's bull to me. Well,
the thing is, right now the Republicans are taking credit for what Obama put forward, as really got the ball rolling on.
I think I'd like to point out, though, that the economy isn't really as strong as a lot of people think it is, because Wall Street is not a good indicator of the strength of the economy.
On the top end, the numbers are doing well. You've got GDP growth and things like that. They're all doing well. When you look at the actual impact on people, it's not doing that well.
Wages they've been stagnant, and in a lot of cases, they've actually fallen. I know entire retail stores where they systematically, over a span of a couple years, replace people with people who basically they hired in at much lower wages.
Yeah.
They have to be very careful about how they do that because it's technically illegal.
Right.
But, I've also seen, people, they're working for less money now than they were prior to the 2008 recession.
Yeah, but
so that's kind of, the economy isn't doing well. And I think people on some level know that, unless they're in the top upper echelons and they haven't seen any problems, because prices have gone up, but incomes have gone down.
Right. But it's all political.
Yes, I know. And so people, there is this sort of, things aren't right. You're not better off than you were. That there's really not much an opportunity for you. And so you're angry, but even if you can't quite put your finger on it, you're not sure what you should be angry at. And that's what these people come in and try to direct that anger to a specific group that benefits them in some way.
Yeah, either money or political votes. Or sometimes the hatred itself is the end goal.
Yes.
Your Bannon types who want to create a white Europe, essentially. Is as far as I know, that's pretty much his stated goal.
So does that white Europe include the Poles? The Polish?
I don't freaking know.
Because
racism isn't coherent.
I hear a lot of anti Poland stuff from people.
You want a fun one? Hungary, I think it is, has a far right government at the moment. They're basically Nazis in charge of Hungary. And so they don't let many immigrants in at all. Coincidentally, they also don't get much Islamic terrorism, partly because they're Hungary. They're not like a major power. They weren't involved in the foreign.
They're not really targeting them to begin with.
Yeah. But they don't get much Islamic terrorism. They don't get much. They don't let many immigrants. They don't take it. I don't think they take any refugees. But so the far right love. Oh yeah, Hungary, they're great. But they come over here, bloody immigrants. It's like, can you? Racism isn't coherent.
And it's because the idea that everyone in Europe, who is white is considered to be that they're all loving and accepting of each other is ridiculous if you know anything about European history.
Right.
These are nations that have 1,000+ years of hatred towards each other.
And Don't forget,
I mean,
a
I'm
lot of the
amazed.
immigration
I'm amazed
comes
the
from
UK and
Europe.
French get along as well as they do right now. You know, or like
Weirdly,
the French and the Germans. I mean,
The French
God.
aren't hated that much. The Germans are, because
Yeah.
if I'm right, I think the Germans are ruling over us from the European something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just looking at it, I mean, like there was an entire region of like along the border of France and Germany that changed hands so often that like the people there actually spoke like a combination of French and German and didn't have any real allegiance to anyone because they're like, whatever, in 10 years we'll just be ruled by a different country anyway. So,
we were constantly at war.
Yeah, I mean, it's you guys had like the 100-year war with France.
Yeah, I think it was like 112 years actually.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's the idea that like, oh, if you just make Europe white, everything will be like everybody will just sing "Kumbaya," which is funny because it's actually an African song.
Which,
And they'll just get along and hold hands and everything. It's like, no, they won't.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it in the past. Like before the racism against the current people. They were racist against the Chinese. Before that, it was the Catholics, the Irish Catholics, and before them, it was the Italians. And
Poles and Romanians, they're both white, but they're also like targets of racism because they're. Because racism doesn't really make any sense. It's just people who are identified as other people, and then we don't like them.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back like 120 years, you can find like lists of like 20 different races, about like 10 of which are all people that we consider white today. And they were considered different races, and they were like put on a scale and everything. I mean, it was really weird.
World War II, the Jewish, populations, everyone hated them. Even here in America, there was a lot of like Jewish hate. Henry Ford, he was not a fan of Jewish people.
Infamously, just before World War II, I should say, was like, well, we don't condone. Basically, I think Trump, we don't condone Hitler's message, but we think he has a point about the Jewish problem, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Nazis were actually very popular in the U.S. leading up to World War II.
Henry Ford.
There was a large segment of the population that were actually very pro-Nazi.
Yeah. Like I was saying, Henry Ford was definitely a fan of the Nazis, and the Nazis were a fan of him. Like, I do remember hearing, like, some of the prominent Nazis even had, like, portraits of him in their homes and stuff, So, like, it's interesting. But,
yeah.
It's not quite as black and white as it's made out to be, but yeah.
Yeah. And, we're actually, I believe within our main topic, we were going to kind of dabble into like tribalism and kind of, I guess, what kind of contributes to all of it. But,
all
right. But yeah, we're going to wrap this up and, continue to the main topic if it's okay with y'all.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, people all over the place are just angry for different reasons. Some of them are for the economy, some aren't. They're all basically saying,
I'm in a rage! This is the maddest I've ever been!
And, some of them have justified reasons for it, and some others don't, and...
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Let's go into the
topic. Wait, I'm going to say my lasting words now.
No, you're not allowed, Jordan. No, but yeah.
No, look, I'm just saying, I just find it oddly strange that now the Republicans are now view the economy favorably, and Democrats are now view the economy unfavorably, which is a shift from when they viewed it when Obama was in office. So it's very political. Very political. That's all I want to say.
Because their team isn't in charge anymore.
Yep, and their team is. So, yay, everything's good.
Yeah.
So, but moving on. So, look, all right, we all visit YouTube. I was just doing it like.
What's YouTube?
Like half an hour ago. Well, Chris is weird. He's one of those weird creatures that's just never heard of that. Never heard of it. But
I think he even still has a TV.
Oh my God!
Actually, one of my computer monitors is actually a TV, but yeah.
Ooh.
42-inch TV screen, yeah. but you know, it's
40-inch
42
for computer monitor.
Yeah, man, 42. It's set back, you know. I mean,
how does it fit on your desk?
Well, I've shown you pictures before. I actually have two desks, like it's sort of like layered almost, you know, one before the other, a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah. Hey, man, this is what you have to do when you're going blind, okay? You know.
Fair enough.
Oh man. So yeah. So it sounds like we all know YouTube very well. But anyway, So I mean, look, you're watching adorable puppy videos, you know, Pomeranians, little baby palms inside of baskets, and you pair to the right side of your screen to the recommended section, and you see they're recommending Alex Jones. You're like, what the fuck is this? Why are they recommending Alex Jones to me right now? I'm trying to let's just have a good moment. Well, look, that is
I have to say, that's not an experience I've ever had.
It depends.
Usually when I'm like going down like the puppy and like the cute animal rabbit trail that you kind of always inevitably go down on YouTube at some point in your life.
Right.
They usually just keep advertising more of the same stuff.
I've had some weird moments.
Usually I get like the Alex Jones ads and like the weird conspiracy theory shit when I'm on my political videos.
Mm-hmm.
Because they use similar tags.
Right. And then underneath the Alex Jones video, it's like a video that says they're coming for you. I'm like, what? And you're curious, so you just click on it and you see what it is, and it's, you know, the brown people and blah, blah, blah.
I've clicked on some very interesting sounding documentaries, and then I get like 5 minutes in, I'm like, oh, this is conspiracy nonsense. Yeah, I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, you got to do it quick, too.
I have clicked on that was fascinating. A bit of physics I don't understand. No, let's click on it. 5 minutes and I realized this is completely and utter nonsense, but I'll keep watching it because it's hilarious.
Yeah, sometimes I'll stick in and I'll just like pop a whole bunch of comments down there just to like fuck with people.
Mm.
You know, it's fun to troll them sometimes, you know.
Yeah, but look, it sounds like that's an experience we're all familiar with. It's one that we all had, and except the only difference is that we have the ability to kind of discern our way out of the more extreme recommendations. But sadly, that is not always the case. And YouTube is unfortunately have become kind of known for this, I guess, recommending or even auto-playing more extreme content in relation to the video that you were watching right before that, you know? So we're talking about YouTube extremism and that's more pointedly, I think more generally, social media extremism, because as we probably know, this isn't necessarily unique to YouTube. It's just that their algorithm's a little bit different, but
it's interconnected as well.
Right.
Yeah, I've had some of that same extremist stuff recommended to me on Facebook, and I'm like, how the fuck did this end up on my feed?
Right.
Yeah, it's weird whenever I see like random like Thunderfoot episodes or something like just show up in my recommended stuff. It's like, what? No, I don't want to watch this. But
yeah, I've been getting one recently that shows up and it says, "Oh, here's a Thunderfoot video." I've not watched Thunderfoot for years since it went off the rails.
Right, but I specified YouTube in the title because a study came out. Actually, YouTube last year released their numbers in terms of viewership. And it turns out that we spend 1 billion hours a day on YouTube, which is more than Netflix, in Facebook combined, in video via Facebook combined. And also, let's put that in comparison to TV viewership, which is last year was about 1.25 billion, which is actually on a decline. So, however, YouTube is on the incline. So even it's not very far from eclipsing the viewership that TV currently has now. So I'm just saying that YouTube will become the dominant force in entertainment and media. And so that's kind of scary when we all have this experience of, this being recommended, this extremist content, because us being 20, 30-year-old are not the only people using YouTube. There's people older who are unfamiliar with how information works on the internet, and also younger people who don't understand it either.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I understand. And actually, you just touched on something I think we should also do as a topic at some point, where YouTube is becoming a very, very big platform, and things like it, like Facebook and everything, and that kind of monopoly of the social environment on the internet is actually something really, really disturbing that needs to be dealt with at some point. But
yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
It is. Though, the other day, have you guys seen the new Battlefield 5 game, and particularly the cover? There's it's supposed to be.
I think it has a woman on it. Beyond that, I have no idea.
It's set in an alternate World War II, and the cover art was this woman with a cyborg arm. And the internet went kind of mental, because the internet does. Having a woman in World War II is ahistorical. Okay, when
having a cyborg arm in World War II is ahistorical.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Angry Joe, you may have heard of, may have not, did a video about this, talking about how basically, like, people are going fucking nuts. And he's played the game and it's not bad, and people need to chill out a bit. And he got a whole shit ton of hate. He was talking in the video about how he's never experienced it before, because, like, thousands of tweets and comments and everything just pouring in of the most vile, hateful stuff, as if he's, like, just shot the Queen or something. And it brings me on to something I wanted to talk about, and it's the level of organization, I want to say, of these grievance politics groups on the internet. There's a subset, I don't want to say subset, but a very large subset of people who they go into YouTube to find things, again, to get angry about.
Right.
So go on, and they'll find their favourite YouTubers, and their favourite YouTubers who've done a video about this Angry Joe video and gone, oh yeah, here's an SJW feminist liberal cock who's talking about how women were in World War II, and that's obviously false because that's ahistorical, and he demands that all games have women in them, even if it's not historical. And he'd said none of this, of course, but then they go on the video and they type in the comments and make tweets and all this. And that's what they do. And it's really fucking weird.
Women, there were actually women who served in combat roles in World War II, although usually it was the Air Force.
World War I as well, there was the infamous Russian.
Yeah.
I looked into it for World War II, but...
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't, like, super common or anything, but...
But that's not even the first time I heard of, aggravated, I guess, like, men on YouTube, en masse downvoting a certain video specifically for the fact that it has a female lead.
Yeah, that's one way to say it, though. It's like, it's semi-organized. So, I mean, people underestimate the size of this, just the sheer scale of it. And I'm sure some of it's automated.
Yeah, there's a big automation effort with a lot of these groups, too.
But that just speaks to the level of organization I'm talking about, really. If they've got a massive organization, a massive bunch of automated accounts that are doing this. No. But the right likes to paint it as if it's almost an even playing field, that you can go on YouTube or the social media and it's even liberal biased and there's loads of lefties everywhere. And, you can barely speak. But in actuality, the right dominate the internet. If you step outside the lefty groups on Facebook and it's wall-to-wall Muslim grooming gangs. Oh my God, there's Muslim rape gangs fucking everywhere, and no-go zones and Sharia courts in the UK, and my God, and that's all they talk about. Is weird. And YouTube as well. You step outside the liberal pages, and it's just hate mobs, and these people will make videos targeting people, and then they get mobbed.
Right, and I
yeah, it's painted as if it's some sort of balanced or even biased towards the left, but it really isn't. The right dominate the online space.
Right. It's just, just victimhood in the right.
I watched, it was sort of I guess I can call it like a mini, not really documentary, but basically this guy went through basically some stuff about far-right groups and stuff, and like actual leaks and stuff from within these groups that show just how they automate things, and they have like so many bots per person and everything, and they actually coordinate all their moves. And so what may look like, almost 1,000 people coming in and downvoting and leaving like, mean comments and stuff in the comment section, it's actually only about 10 people. They all just have 100 bots each.
Right.
When we did, because obviously this affects young people a lot, and so we get trained on it when we do teaching. And one thing they talk about is the tactics used to radicalize people, and one of them is group activities. Almost same thing you do actually if you go for a new job and you want to do team building and stuff like that. Group activities, but online group activities. So, and in this case, the group activity I'm talking about is mobbing. So they'll have a Discord channel or something, and they'll be on voice chat, and they'll be logging in and out of accounts and leaving nasty comments and replying to people and using a different account each time and leaving a downvote. So it looks like you've been mobbed by a few hundred people when actually it's like 15, 20, people who've just been doing it for an hour. If you think you have, 10, 20 windows open, you can easily get a few hundred comments in an hour happily on your own. You do that with 20 people, and then that happens again across multiple different groups of people.
Right.
But it builds for people who are vulnerable. Maybe they've got social problems, and these groups do prey on people with mental health issues a lot, and social anxiety, things like this. Being part of a group and doing something as part of a group like that, and feeling like you're doing something meaningful, doesn't have to actually be me. Of course, you and I know that it's completely pointless. It's just a YouTube video. Even if you didn't downvote it, it'd disappear anyway. But they set up this framework as if it's a culture war, and this. And they're doing something meaningful by winning the culture war and preventing the left from taking power. And I say the left because they view the left as this sort of monolithic entity, which is
amusing.
Yeah, a large monolithic entity, which of course, as parts of the left ourselves, we know exactly how fractured the left is and how many different opinions are going on in there. But they see the left as this big monolithic entity represented by the most hardline.
Well, that's how you get comments like Jordan Peterson's nonsensical postmodernist Marxist.
Exactly.
It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
He's he's not fascistic in himself. He's a great entry point to this kind of thing, and he targets the exact type of people I'm talking about. People who are socially anxious, maybe they're poor luck in dating. It happens to everyone, or just lonely in general.
Yeah, and he doesn't purposely bring people into those types of groups.
Yeah.
But those types of groups use Jordan Peterson to draw people into their groups.
Yeah, he's an entry point. He's a feeder into these groups.
Yeah. I don't think it's intentional on his part, but he and Sam Harris and I think also Joe Rogan, they also tend to be more of these entry points that people tend to start at. And then basically you have these groups that they use tags specifically to get themselves in that related category, so there's more chances of people clicking on their videos. And then they try to style themselves as similar to them, just a bit more in depth.
They provide a bit of an almost intellectual. I say almost intellectual. I can't bring myself to call Jordan Peterson intellectual, but an almost intellectual, pseudo-intellectual suit to wear almost for their what amounts to just bigotry, really.
I would disagree at least with Joe Rogan. At least Joe Rogan seems to be more thoughtful than the rest of those guys. The other guys.
But he has a lot of far right people on his podcast.
He does also have left people too. I just actually saw.
But they do use him to try to basically they go into his comment sections and stuff, and they try to draw people into their groups.
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily mean that he's aligned with them, or
people do
he's
that
even
too,
leading
probably,
that
I'm
way.
guessing. I mean,
probably.
So I mean, I don't know.
I mean, we're talking about extremism here. We're not talking about specifically right wing. That is kind of generally how they do it. They go into these places where they think they can find people who might lean in their direction, that they can talk into, having their viewpoints, and then they try to pull them in.
Yeah,
and, I mean,
if you're looking for young men who are socially anxious and vulnerable to being brought into a cult, a Jordan Peterson forum is a really good place to start.
Yep. Chances are you're going to find some people who are at least fit the bill, even if they don't actually bite.
And because of the nature of the internet, you can have access to 10,000 people in a single forum. And of course, you only need a few.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm familiar with these kinds of techniques because it's actually something that we were actually trained to do as the process of teaching us how to witness to people, which is a term that Christians use to mean basically trying to convince people to basically become Christians, or at least become your kind of Christian, because usually you're witnessing to other Christians. But I mean, you go out and you seek out and you try to talk to them, and you try to look for ways that you could talk them into coming to your field, or you try to talk them into listening to you, to thinking that you care about them, that you have the answers for them in some way, and then you try to work in the religion. And
that's actually, I was actually going to say, what these groups do is they'll find someone on these forums, or they'll make a thread trying to bait people in, and then once they comment, they'll have a look at the profiles, they'll have a look at the person, say okay, and they'll talk them around to coming into a different forum, which is more selective, which they control, and then they'll discuss the grievance, what exactly it is, what the hook is, and then work the ideology into it. Oh yeah, so you're socially anxious. Yeah, it's a shame it's those feminists that are the problem there. And that gets you into the anti-SJW, anti-feminist stuff, anti-liberalism from there, and then before you know it, you're a fascist.
Right.
Or at least hanging out with fascists and saying, well, these people have a point.
Yeah. And then, of course, the thing is, once they find one thing they can make you against using that hook, and then they associate that thing you're against with all the others, which is why they have this left, the monolithic entity, which is pro-SJW, but also pro-Muslim and what immigration, whatever else. So by saying you're now anti-SJW, they can then work you into saying, well, there's this other stuff that the left also is pro, and you should also be against that.
And I mean, it's just like, I mean, Christianity usually, it's like, it's sin, it's the devil, it's, your sinful nature, that you need to work against, and you can only do that through Jesus. You can only do that through our specific version of Christianity. You can only do that through our church, and so they try to wedge them very carefully into it. You don't want to push too hard because then they'll leave, but you don't want to just not pull hard enough because then they just will lose interest.
Yeah, the safeguarding people described it as escalating levels of radicalization. So you start at the bottom, and then you introduce to the next level, and then when you get comfortable with that, you introduce the next level up.
Sort of like Scientology.
Kind of, yeah.
Well, see, and that's why I draw the parallel to religious techniques of converting people to their religion, because in the end, it's really the same techniques. It's just applied in different ways.
Yeah.
Right,
it's about moving that Overton window, the window of what you find acceptable. So you put something just on the fringe, and then you keep doing it until they get comfortable. But don't worry, it's just a joke. I mean, we're not serious or anything. And then you push it a bit further, and they'll do this through different groups and bringing people into private discords and things like this, and meetings, even in real life. And shifting it along. So, you find this acceptable. Now we're all desensitized to that. Okay, let's just push it a bit further this time.
And especially if you're lonely and you're wanting, someone to hang out with, if you're having trouble finding people, if particularly vulnerable people will be people who don't have like a lot of friends, or like they don't get a lot of attention at home.
Mental health issues are really common.
Mental health issues too.
Right.
Almost fetishized.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. In regards to this too, I kind of want to highlight the Life After Hate founder, Christian Picciolini, where pretty much I want to use him as a specific example because he was a very prominent member within the neo-Nazi movement in the U.S. and was actually recruited by one of the founding members of the neo-Nazism in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And so his story was pretty much aligned exactly with what you guys just said. The only difference is, there were like minor differences, but his parents were Italian immigrants. Just looking for a better life. They started beauty, like a hair cuttery, a beauty shop, better called
a hair cuttery.
I don't know. That
barbershop.
That sounds very British.
A hairdresser.
A hair cuttery.
A hair cuttery.
Hair cutter. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Barbershop.
Whatever. But I feel like there has to be some people that call it that in life.
I've never heard that before.
Well, now.
I know, but it wasn't exactly. He didn't necessarily call it a barbershop. So I was like, so what else could it be called? Yes, a beauty shop. You call it a beauty shop. But anyway,
Nazis having a beauty shop? That doesn't sound right.
Well, no, not exactly. His
well,
parents,
hey, have you seen them lately? They could use all the help they could get.
Sometimes.
Yeah. they just kind of buzz cut like swastikas in their hair, but no, but it was his parents specifically owned the beauty shop, and they had him, which kind of made income very tight, which had them pick up a second or third job, which reduced the time that they spent with him in particular. So he started to act out in order to gain attention, and just one day he was standing on a block, 14 years old, smoking a joint. And he has this skinhead comes up to him, who is the prominent member, who is like the founder of Nazism in the U.S. To come up to him, snatch the joint from between his lips, throw it to the side, and say, "quote That's what the communists and the Jews want you to do to keep you docile." And from that moment on, he kind of he gave him something that his family couldn't, which was community, identity, and a purpose. And years and years, he became a prominent member within the group. Started making hate, like he started a band to whose content was all about hate, and he loses everything, and it comes to a point where finally he's at a point in his life where he's older, and he begins this organization to try to help people, kind of pull them out of more extremist organizations like the ones he was in, and those moments in our lives that kind of lead us astray, he calls potholes. And he says, quote, "Things in life that invariably nudges us off our path, and if they remain unresolved or untreated or not dealt with, sometimes we can get dangerously lost down dark corridors. Potholes can be things like trauma, abuse, unemployment, neglect, untreated mental health conditions, even privilege." And so that goes. I wanted to bring that up because that goes to what y'all were saying about like how.
This is also sorry to interject, but this is also these things get worse with poor social economic conditions. So if the country's economy is doing worse and people are struggling for money more, you can have money problems, which can cause this kind of thing anyway, because that causes everyone to get more miserable. But maybe you're 14 and your parents are both having to work 2 jobs and you barely see them, and that leaves you vulnerable because you've not had a great childhood. That kind of thing. And one of the chief ways of countering terrorism and extremism, which people don't seem to pay much attention to, is simply making sure the country is running well as a country as a whole. And that doesn't seem to get enough attention.
Yeah,
it doesn't, and how it connects to so much of this. And he just to kind of end things on him, he had a very good quote at the end of things that I think like I'm going to carry with me because I think it sums up how radicalization, the root of radicalization. And he says, quote, "Hatred is a form of ignorance. Fear is its father and isolation is its mother." So once you have isolation, after you've gone through your trauma, now you're isolated from people who can maybe provide that sort of space for you to kind of open up and be, and lend some empathy. You kind of just stew in whatever's bothering you, and from that point on, you don't have a healthy way of kind of translating that into real world applications. So you kind of start, getting influenced by these messages saying that, well, maybe it's this thing that's contributing to where you are right now, which because you also drawing back in isolation, you don't really know much about whatever group of people they're blaming this time. It creates that fear. And then out of that fear, there goes your hatred.
Yeah. Interestingly, I actually did reach out to Life After Hate to try and get an interview for our podcast, and they totally ghosted me. But hopefully in the future, I'll get back in touch with them again and, get someone on in their organization on here. I would love to have an interview with them. That was when we were trying to do start interviewing and stuff like that, like a year ago. But
yeah, sure. But yeah, I the thing that sparked me to cover this topic too is I'm going to get into a little bit is her name is Zeynep Tufekci, and she's a writer and academic, and she did an experiment because she was covering she was at a Donald Trump rally live to witness what she believed was going to be an important moment within our history. Not for good, but just an important moment within our history. And so in order to kind of get some quotes, she watched the video of that rally on YouTube. And then from that moment on, YouTube started recommending her videos of quote unquote white genocide. And that eventually lost to Holocaust denial videos and Nazi propaganda. And in order to carry on this experimentation, she wiped out her history, kind of her YouTube activity, and started watching videos of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And from that, YouTube started recommending and autoplaying videos related to secret government agencies and September 11 conspiracy. Super weird. And
conspiracy scene and the far right scene are intrinsically linked as well. Generally, that's part of the we're a special club with special knowledge kind of thing. It's part of fostering the community.
Right.
Yeah.
I posted a video from Jim Jeffries' show the other day in the public Evolution of Now Discord that was pretty interesting. He actually brought in a bunch of, QAnon people, which these people think that QAnon is like this secret group that also actually includes Donald Trump in it, I believe, and also JFK Jr. He didn't die, apparently, and he's in this group.
Mueller, believe it or not.
What's that?
And Mueller himself, believe it or not.
Wow.
Part of the QAnon conspiracy is that Mueller himself is actually working for Donald Trump, and the whole Russia probe is actually a cover to investigate Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And Mueller is on the good guy side.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's kind of funny what some of them think about things and stuff. Like Jim Jeffries mentions, do they believe in lizard people? Most of the people there, he had like 4 people. 3 of them said no right away, and then the one guy is like, define lizard people. And it's just like, it's interesting the gradation between all of those QAnon conspiracy theorists and what they actually believe. Because one guy also was talking about how flat Earth is an actual thing, as well as another guy was kind of like criticizing that as well, like trying to I don't know. It's just interesting the different levels of them and how they all are very different from each other, and yet similar in some ways.
Yeah, it's very it's interesting because you can't. Sure, YouTube kind of hands you this content on a silver platter, but it's only up to you in order to actually click on that content and to take it in. So it is kind of it's I guess it's basing things on sort of like a human trait of just being very curious about what's behind the curtain, just wanting to get further insight of things that we don't really know too much about, or if maybe feel that, I don't know, maybe there's something else behind this. That's a very human like impulse and feeling.
Yeah. Well, there's also shoot, I think I lost my train of thought there.
Sad, low energy, doesn't have the stamina.
I should say these kinds of people, they know, they've done a lot of research and work to try to figure out YouTube's algorithms and how to get themselves promoted as much as possible, and how to end up visible on the most amount of videos as possible. So I mean, it's not necessarily that it's like these people are taking advantage of the algorithms and the systems and stuff to their advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, the right is completely dominating the online space.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start doing that with our show. Jeez.
The other main thing with YouTube in particular, I've seen a lot of videos lately of people talking about and complaining about. So YouTube, since the stupid adpocalypse, which if people aren't aware, that was where there was all those basically hit pieces complaining that a single advertisement had ended up on a single far-right video, which I don't even remember, was it like a Nazi video or something? But when it shouldn't have, which, those things happen from time to time, but it's actually extremely rare. And as it was prior to the press actually reporting on it, there'd been like maybe 70 people that saw that video, and that channel had like 5 subscribers.
Wow.
But that kind of kicked off the whole adpocalypse there, and there were people pulling their ads and stuff. So YouTube was panicking and trying to reassure people that everything was fine and everything. And that's a whole another thing that literally you could just put in adpocalypse into your YouTube search bar and you'll probably find like 50 videos talking about it.
50,000 maybe.
Yeah. I know, probably 1,000, but I mean, like, whatever. But yeah, so after that whole thing, so there's one group that never pulled their ads and instead upped their ads. And those are the anti-LGBTQ ads and the anti-LGBTQ people. Like all those, what are they called? They usually have family in the name somewhere.
Family values.
Family values and like
traditional family.
Yeah, traditional family and stuff. And they're all about how, pray away the gay, et cetera, et cetera. And so they increased the number of ads that they actually have on YouTube. And YouTube's more than happy to take their money because they were kind of desperate for ads at that point. They put in what hashtags what keywords and search words that they wanted to be associated with. Well, turns out they want to be on LGBTQ videos because they want to go in. And so there was a lot of people complaining that essentially, like, I go to watch, my favorite vlogger who happens to be a lesbian or, who's queer in some way or, whatever.
Yeah, so you'll have a video.
Up on the terminology, I guess. But, like, they go to watch that and instead they have to sit through an ad that is basically telling them to pray away the gay.
You'll have a video about how aimed at vulnerable people, trying to tell them about what it's like to be LGBT or maybe transgender people or something like this, and you'll have before it'll have an advert, some hateful twat who's talk about how it's unnatural. And you're like, this is really dangerous.
It's not right, and it's very bad. It's very demoralizing, especially because a lot of the people on these channels are younger people who are just starting to discover their sexuality and, explore that sort of thing.
And maybe
so they're trying to get advice, and they end up watching these ads, which is completely contradictory to the kind of video that they're trying to watch. And I mean, it's something that, like, in the YouTube atheist community has been something that we laugh at for years, because Christians have been buying, pro-Christian ads and putting them on atheist videos for a long time, and we just kind of always laugh at them. But, it's, while it's amusing, when you're like, yeah, I'm here because I'm laughing at Christians in the first place, hey, thanks for paying the atheists, but then you go to this and you're like, no, it's
videos too.
Vulnerable people too. I mean, it can be very dangerous. I mean, when I first really started watching YouTube, it was watching atheist videos.
Yeah.
Since then, the atheist community has kind of splintered and gone off in many different directions,
including straight off the rails.
True, that too.
MRAs are some of the MRA community, at least on YouTube and stuff, I think, is also former
what
atheists.
used to be the atheist community.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd really say MRA, but definitely anti-feminist, anti-SJW, all that. But I mean, it's just, and with those, I think it was just a case of, after they kind of ran out of creationist stuff to go after, because they kind of ran the creationists off of YouTube, that they basically had to find something new to post videos about. And, kind of over time, they kind of ended up going to their different niches, and, maybe they still have the same subscribers, maybe they don't. I do know that if I go to a Thunderfoot video and I try to post something in the comments, it's completely different atmosphere than it was back when he was just picking on creationists. Completely different.
And just for the record, it's not just because you agreed with them. You were a conservative Christian at the time, right?
I was actually by that point I was at least agnostic, I think. But it was the fact that there was a rational conversation to be had there. Occasionally, you'd get Christians coming in and stuff, and then we'd have fun playing with them. But there was a rational conversation. Now it's just, oh my God, feminist.
You're a feminist.
Yeah, and I'm just like, what the hell? It's like, okay, and it's not even like the same users or anything.
They're still complaining about Anita Sarkeesian in some of those places. It's pretty crazy.
Seriously,
years and years of that.
Ignore her. She wants attention. Don't give it to her. If you don't,
like I said earlier,
away.
About how they will mob people for like a group to try and build that kind of community spirit. She was one of the enemies to be targeted. As part of the culture wars.
She is particularly stupid, but
she is. But
I mean, like,
with stupid people, she didn't really say anything important. Just she didn't go away.
She wasn't even she was literally not on anybody's radar at all until all of a sudden you had a bunch of YouTube videos going against her, and it was like, oh my goodness, now she's somebody to talk about. And then she was getting on news shows and stuff, and it was like, she was literally nobody before you talked.
She had her own little niche on the internet, and nobody cared. And then all of a sudden, everybody cared.
Yeah.
And another one I actually wanted to mention was they have this knack of making parodies, trying to parody like SJWs, what they call SJWs at the left, with really extreme views and stuff. And then someone else will pick up this parody and say, "Look at what this SJW is saying." And they'll use that to justify their other parodies, which of course other people buy into. When you look into some of the more extreme cases of what the right's shouting about this time, it turns out to be a parody.
Yeah, it's a Poe,
It's one of them poeing, trying to do a parody.
Yeah, and it's always interesting. Like, I mean, we've talked about this before, off the podcast, but I mean, like, when talking to like flat earthers, it's like, okay, are they genuine or are they a Poe? I honestly can't tell.
For the audience's sake, just explain what Poe is, I guess.
A Poe is someone... Oh, go ahead, Michael.
So when you've got a view that's particularly stupid, you can't tell if it's fake or not. So if I said to you, Donald Trump, if a news story tomorrow came out saying Donald Trump couldn't spell China, it's like, am I joking or am I actually telling the truth here? You know?
It's like when The Onion, someone who's obviously making fun of them, but at the same time you sit there and you're like, is that a real story or not?
Yeah.
All right.
The actual thing is so stupid you can't parody it. You can't tell the difference between a parody and not, and it's called a Poe.
So a Poe is basically someone who, basically Stephen Colbert, the Colbert Report, that was a Poe. He was acting as a Poe.
Yeah, and it comes from Poe's law, which is the idea that if something's really, really stupid, you can't parody it. And you can't tell the difference between a parody and the real thing.
So, I mean, he was essentially acting as a Poe in that show. And, it was the case where, it was kind of obvious and we knew. But I knew people who were right-wing who were like, yeah, no, he's a real conservative. They couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah. It's similar to how they react to The Onion.
Yeah, like these days, like you see a headline and you like pause and you're like, wait, is it Borowitz Report? Is it The Onion? I can't tell. And then like you look for where it came from because you're like, that is such a ridiculous headline. Wait, is it true?
Right.
Like when Trump confessed to obstruction of justice on Twitter, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Is this real?
Okay.
Well, probably all of the above.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been avoiding that because I'm so burned out on Trump.
Now, I know in the extremist field, though, on YouTube, that's actually where Jordan Peterson got his biggest break with his ideology. He started his own YouTube channel, and it's only because of that is why he's so ridiculously popular now. And but like he's I don't know. he's an interesting character.
Well, like
for the most part.
How do you think that, with YouTube becoming the standard for media consumption and there being figures like Jordan Peterson and Alex Jones, etc., like YouTube is essentially acting as an incubator for figures like them. So like how do you like do you think it's possible to create a system of moderation or if any kind, or is there any way to kind of better order the type of way information is kind of displayed on the platform?
The primary problem with social media is that it tends to create bubbles. Because, so like I watch Secular Talk, Majority Report, Jamal Thomas, other left-leaning people who report on the news. And so I get those recommended to me a lot. I don't really come across right-leaning stuff very often because I watch all that left-leaning stuff. Occasionally, like some left-leaning conspiracy theory will pop up on my dash, but beyond that, that's it. Whereas if I were to log off and I were to actually start watching a bunch of, I don't know, right-wing leaning stuff, like a bunch of Fox News clips on YouTube, I'd probably start seeing Alex Jones and, a lot of the other right-wing or right-leaning or anything like that stuff on YouTube. I wouldn't ever see Secular Talk because it wouldn't be recommended to me.
I know I've had it where I've actually went out and looked for something on the right just because like I heard something about it and I wanted to see the original video. And then after that point, for at least like a day or something like that, I'll get like recommendations for other right-wing content, but it usually disappears over time and it stops recommending it. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, and also like on Twitter, there's the people you follow. And then there's the people that you block or you mute or whatever. So you never see their stuff. even with just the people that you follow, you're only going to see their stuff and the stuff that they like and they follow.
Right.
And so unless they're pulling from a diverse field, or unless you're pulling from a diverse field, you're never going to see a diverse field. And it's the same thing with Facebook.
Yeah. And look, I totally respect the idea of in diversifying sources, but I do see a difference between more left-leaning media organizations and more right-wing ones in terms of the validity of the information being put out there. So, so there's fault there. I don't want to get into a point of false parity where we are comparing the two, because I think more left-leaning organizations have, at least, I don't know, me being biased here, but based on my experience with them, are more likely to report accurate information in comparison to, say, more extreme right-wing type of media organizations. So,
well, see, I wasn't necessarily creating a parody there. I was just simply saying we all kind of have our own social media bubbles, and unless you make an effort to diversify your social media and make sure that you're actually getting information from all kinds of different political spectrums, you're not going to see it. You're going to see literally what you look for. Regardless of whether it's true or not. So, I mean, this whole thing with fake news, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it, because it's a difficult topic, because you're kind of running the risk of infringing upon freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Freedom of the press has nothing to do with whether or not what the press is reporting is factual. If what they're reporting is not factual, then they're liable for libel and slander, and then they can face those charges. But they still have the right to report on things. It's just if what they report on is not factual, they run the risk of getting sued.
Right.
That's the main thing. That's what keeps freedom of the press in check. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Right.
And with freedom of the speech, I mean, it's a difficult topic, because especially the way YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter kind of run their particular kind of spheres. The same thing with like Instagram and Snapchat. They run their own particular type of service, which is different from each other. They're not really competing with each other. Most people have an account in all of them. They may not have every single one of them. Like, I have zero interest in Instagram and Snapchat, but I have a Twitter account, a Facebook account, and a YouTube account. And I'm on all three of them fairly often. They're not really competing with each other for my usage. And they do pretty much dominate the field at what they do. There is no real competition for Twitter. There is no real competition for Facebook or for YouTube. Some people have tried, but they never get hardly anywhere,
Right. I feel like we come to a point, and that's a really important point to make too, because like this conversation has been like everywhere since Alex Jones been booted from a million platforms, except for like Paris. Yeah. But they're like the only ones that like hold out. But we've gotten to a point now where these social media, it almost seems a little even disingenuous to even just call them social media platforms, because they are now such staples to communication. They're almost a necessity at this point. And so, but the way that they're spoken about, they're less like social media organizations or companies, and more like governments, the way people talk about these companies.
More like utilities.
More like utilities, how people talk about freedom of speech aligned with these companies, despite the fact that, are we asking, what are we asking from these companies? These companies do also have the same right as like any other company. They're sort of like a marketplace of ideas, and so they have the right to pretty much dictate what's said on their platform, right?
But should they? Is another question.
Yeah. Because Oh, yeah, go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say that, like, when it comes to, like, YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, like you did say, they have no actual competition. And so that means they are the de facto marketplace for what they're those types of social media. And so the problem with banning people off of those and limiting people's ability to speak on those platforms is very obvious. Like I don't really like. Recently, Alex Jones got banned off of Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and all of them, right? I personally think that's actually a bad idea. And we did talk about it here, and I've thought about it since then and everything, and it is actually a bad idea in my opinion, because that does open a precedent for them to just start banning anyone that they don't like their speech. And so that can fall on people on the left and the right. And so because of that can be a very slippery slope. And I think it's a bad idea.
After they were praised for taking Alex Jones down, they started taking down some left-leaning people too.
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, they have control over their space because they're technically a corporation. And it's a very difficult thing because they're a corporation and they're very private and they're privately run and stuff and operated. But at the same time, there's the argument that because they hold such monopolies, they should be treated more as a utility and not as a private corporation.
Yeah, and you have to find some way of breaking them up or I don't know.
And actually creating actual competition.
However, is there a line in terms of what they're able to control? A line based on what they can control, based within other public places, there are certain rules on how you conduct yourself. You will be thrown out if you act out of term based on their own rules and needs of services. So
those rules are usually in line with laws, though, like the no shirt, no shoes, no service policy.
But there's airplane
some interpretations
fire,
of decency laws do put that requirement on it.
Mm-hmm.
So airplanes are their own weird thing. I don't even know how they get away with half the shit they do. Right.
But as we're coming into a place where YouTube will become the de facto, if it's not already, are you saying that it's just a marketplace of every idea, or should there be some form of moderation, because one thing that I've a quote that's really important is it's from James Boydell, who's like a writer and artist. He says, quote, "We need to stop thinking about technology as a solution to all our problems, but think of it as a guide to what those problems actually are, so we can start thinking about them properly and start to address them." So
that's very true. Though I feel like this is a massive topic that deserves us spending an hour on its own. And we are running out of time.
Yeah, I just wanted to say basically that's kind of why I'm very split on this topic, and I haven't actually made up my mind on it, because it's very complicated and very difficult to discuss. Yeah. Because, I mean, it's, I guess, okay, yeah. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. We are going off the rails.
There's so much to say, but so little time.
So I'm thinking of changing my next week's topic to this, so we can talk about it.
Nice.
Okay.
I like it.
I suppose we could do that, yeah?
Yeah, certainly.
Sounds like a plan?
Sweet. It gives me more time to research what I was going to do anyway, because there's a whole Netflix thing I want to watch about it, and a lot of extra reading I found. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so got that. We have that to look forward to, but in terms of our topic today, I guess we'll wrap things up, right? I guess we're all done here. I think we talked about just about a lot of what I wanted to talk about. Was there anything else I wanted to add?
Just be aware of the techniques that people use, and be aware of you and people you know falling into the trap. And like I said, one of the best defenses against extremism is simply to be, in the words of the safeguarding people, sometimes one of the best things for people who are falling down to radicalization is to simply be an empathetic adult. who can listen to people without all the radicalization stuff, you know?
Yeah, just, I don't know. Keep in mind how they go about it, and be aware that this stuff goes on. And, if you ever find yourself sitting there going, well, the Nazis weren't all wrong, you might be on the wrong path.
Yeah. And remember, one of the key defenses is to vote in a good government who can actually make things right. So, vote progressive.
Right. Vote Labour. But anyway, you guys have a great week, I guess, and we'll see you next week with the continuation of this.
Leave us a thumbs up.
Like and subscribe if you like it.